patience, discipline, trial and error, of being as bold as one can be, to go as far as one needs to. I will find what it is that truly ails them, and I will cure them.
You know, I had this big, elaborate intro typed out, but never mind that. Right off the bat, I just want to say, I won't be spoiling any major plot revelations in this review, so if you're new to the series and you happen to stumble across this video, I won't wreck anything big for you. The good news is, I'm happy to say, Bloober Team kept the story nearly identical to the original game. Some things are presented differently, naturally, but the big moments all happen as they did in the original, so if you really want an in-depth breakdown of the various facets, the in-depth character analyses, and discussions about the bits of symbolism in Silent Hill 2, I defer you to my review of the classic. It's 3 hours long, which apparently may be considered distended by some, but I don't live my life on the whims of miserable pricks.
I don't give a fuck.
Anyway, it's going to be tricky, but I'll skirt the spoilers as best I can. But let me tell you, Bloober did a fantastic job of retelling this tale with the utmost respect, while adding plenty of little details that only veteran fans of this game would understand. The basic premise is, James Sunderland is called to the town of Silent Hill with a letter written from his wife, Mary, despite her having been deceased for the past 3 years. Another appreciated feature that Bloober included were these flashbacks for the player to find, like this tunnel where the original lying figure was. These little moments are spread out throughout the entire game, and as someone who recently spent several months completely enveloped in the base game, these flashback moments put a big smile on my face at several points. As if to say, okay, those were great, but check out how we did it. The lying figure is the perfect example of this. James still finds the beast walking around town through the fog like a Konami employee with a sweater and a Walkman. But now, instead of the simple tunnel fight, James pursues the creature through a backyard into someone's house. James still grabs his radio, a 2x4, and fights the lying figure, but it's crafted to be a touch more grandiose and visceral. Same concept, extra flair, and that's a big theme throughout this remake. But that doesn't mean that everything is bigger and louder and therefore better. Some things are more subtle, especially for fans of the base game. For instance, the dead man in front of the television in Woodside. Now, instead of seeing him plainly, he's got a big bloody sheet covering his head and torso. What? That's not subtle, I hear you say. Ah, but it is. Yes, the imagery is disturbing and suggests great brutality, but you cannot see his character model now either. But you can see those boots, can't you? Cutscenes play out relatively the same, with many, though not all of the classic lines returning. Much of the blocking for each scene is similar, with adjustments here and there.
Look at the size of that boy's head. Shh. I'm not kidding, it's like an orange on a toothpick.
Shh, you gotta give the boy a complex.
Well, that's a huge noggin. It's a virtual planetoid. Has its own weather system.
Well, that was offside, wasn't it? He'll be crying himself to sleep tonight on his huge pillow.
I do like how this little side room, thanks to modern graphical fidelity, has much more defined, prominent displays to the glory of American football, in reference to, well, if you know, you know. Another cool thing that I felt was kind of bold for Bloober, frankly, was the outright addition of new environments to frame classic scenes, like how Eddie and little Laura are now hanging out at the Revere movie theater instead of the Bolorama. It's not a massive change, and the conversations between characters mostly play out the same, but I love that Bloober put in some serious effort into expanding the town for players. Pete's Bolorama is still available to visit, and it's great, with a clever nod that I'm sure you'll expect, but new environments were very welcome. There are even some entirely new cutscenes set in these entirely new areas, like the urban legend about the Candle Lady told by Maria in Moonlight Grove. The scene doesn't alter anything, but it was a quaint addition, and I won't complain about more Silent Hill 2. Well, not for like a while yet anyway. Though, sadly, it has to be said, even though the story and the cutscenes therein are mostly faithful to the original, I have to confess that, at times, some of them do feel a little deflated. Old boy just walks up to the closet, and James is just kinda, yeah, take a couple of these. Pyramid Head goes, hey, alright, see ya, and fucks off till later. The scene with Angela and the mirror also just kinda comes off a little toneless. This is mostly down to the performance, which we'll get more into soon, but overall some of the scenes in the remake do feel less intense than in the original.
I'm sorry.
No!
I suppose we should address the Maria redesign. It's not drastic, and they do make a direct reference to the original outfit, so it doesn't feel like they were trying to pretend like it never happened. And thankfully, there's never a moment where Maria tells James to step aside and let a woman do a man's job or any of that kind of stuff. She still challenges James' masculinity, as she did in the original. The refrigerator comes to mind, which is good. It's an important theme. But nothing has been crowbarred in by one of those scummy consultant groups that essentially bully publishers into taking their advice for a hefty fee or else. The Japanese don't play that shit. Now, Maria is still a very pretty lady that looks identical to James's wife, Mary, but in a slightly sexier form. So, I'm not crying about the outfit change. I'm not some greasy slob that needs big fake triple G's and camel toes popping out to make me feel like a real man. As much as I adore games like Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, I did always think the character proportions were a little exaggerated. So, again, I'm not whinging about the woke mob kidnapping my childhood, but Maria has been toned down just a little bit. Yeah, she still makes suggestive remarks and uses physicality around James in a slightly inviting way, but outside of the wardrobe change, it's more in the way she does stuff like reaching for the Heaven's Night Key, which comes off like a dude trying to get into his truck. Look, I'm not shaking my fist at the sky. It's really a non-issue. And this is important. Bloober Team cleverly kept Maria as a temptress, but no longer with simple infidelity. When you know who Maria really is and some of James's demons, the way she strongly urges James to have a stiff drink, seeing that flirty, girlish mask slip a little bit as she provokes him, gave me a genuine chill. So, make no mistake, Maria is still Maria. She likes long walks in town and coughing on the boardwalk.
Oh, I get it. It's very clever.
And although, sadly, Born from a Wish was excluded for now, There is a direct reference to this scenario as James and Maria stumble upon the Baldwin mansion in town. By the way, nice place. Definitely affordable if you work at a high-paying job. Doctor, perhaps? Anyway, James finds dispersed white liquid on a table outside of the mansion and some kids' toys nearby. I refuse to make a Diddy joke. This is followed by a conversation with Maria where she says that the place gives her the creeps, but that she can't explain why. If you know Born from a Wish, these little moments will have you buzzing with theories. It's subtle, but it's great. I'm just gonna halt there and leave the original story alone, lest this go on forever. I just want to make a mention about newer stuff from Bloober that I really appreciated. Instead of altering what made the original storyline so memorable and revered, they added much more understated yet rich story threads to their game. For example, the plot about the director in Brookhaven who is convinced that, come whatever may, his troubled patients can and will be cured. Pay attention to this little plot line. As you weave through Brookhaven and on through to the other world, you can track his descent into hopelessness and something else, and it's done so well. The guy genuinely wanted to cure his patients, but he didn't fully understand what he was dealing with, and he reached too far, at which point he couldn't go back. There are also other, even more subtle bits of storytelling that one could easily miss if not paying close attention. For instance, in Brookhaven, you can find a journal soaked in blood, detailing an incident where a patient became manic and sprinted from the pool area, broke through a window, and ran into the pharmacy where he was finally restrained, sedated, and stitched up just before he bled out. As I wandered around the pool, through the garden, and into the pharmacy, I noticed a trail of blood in a subtle pattern, ending at the hole where you retrieve the ear key. This whole patient thing is just extra. You didn't need to learn this in order to retrieve the key, but it adds so much. Little bits of lore in the original game, especially in Brookhaven and Toluca Prison, always left me hungry for more. Bloober Team took this ball and ran hard with it, and I couldn't be more appreciative. I'm not going to run down every single bit, and I'm wrapping this section up, but you may also notice several posters around town referencing alcohol and being under control, etc. All noted, all clever, and all very good. But there is one specific thing I wanted to mention that I caught in Brookhaven Hospital, and if I don't talk about it, I'm going to fucking explode. To the right of the entrance, there's a bulletin board in the hall. One specific poster can be observed. On top, in capital letters, it says, "Remember." Huh, okay, I got the reference, but hold on. Look at that little line on the poster. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt. Then when you click on it and James reads it, feelings of worthlessness blank. Bloober, did we just become best friends? James doesn't want to acknowledge the G word. There's also a bloody sheet in a laundromat with an advert for detergent that promises to wash away the stains of yesterday. Uh-huh. Send in the pyramid. The Unreal Engine was a stellar choice for this remake. There's a long list of features in Unreal 5, like nanite, virtual shadow maps, lumen, but you know, I'd rather leave that for people much more versed on the subject, so let's keep it at my level. Remake look real good. Okay, seriously, it does though. With the image fidelity being what it is, Silent Hill can be brought to life in ways that we would have only dreamed about in 2001. And it's not just pretty things. This engine allows for plot-relevant details to really flourish, like James's hands shaking in the bathroom atop the observation deck, and his visible micro-expressions as he stares at himself in the mirror. Again, not going to spoil anything, but when you know what led up to this scene, you'll be able to appreciate the full worth of these aforementioned details afforded by the new visuals. Fog is absolutely breathtaking in the remake. A thick, voluminous blanket covers most exterior environments, and it coats everything like heavy Simonis cloth. Some areas, like the graveyard, with its overgrowth and decaying, moss-covered headstones, are properly gorgeous and atmospheric to the utmost degree. In general, to see the old familiar locations in this new engine is a wicked, painful mix of nostalgia and the crushing reality of the passing of time. I've read the opinion that the beautiful new graphics ruin the nasty, grimy feel of the original game's Fog world.
I'm gonna have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
The town looks incredible. It feels desolate in the best way, and if you've ever seen footage of abandoned towns after some sort of disaster, this is bang on. Like life had just recently existed here. Rotting newspaper stacks are dropped at the foot of a stoop, overgrown dead grass in everyone's yard, some windows are boarded up, old rotting couches where people used to sit and watch the world go by, and of course, the giant chasm in the middle of the road, as it should be. As a longtime fan of this game, exploring previously barred-off areas is so surreal, and it's something that this remake added that had me buzzing with happiness. I know, happiness in a review of a game? In particular, I kind of flipped out when I first realized you could enter the flower shop. I know it sounds silly, trust me, I know, but when I was a kid, part of what made the town so special to me was imagining what it must have been like outside of the Fog world. Playing this game late into the night, wandering around, visualizing the interior of each business and home used to stir my imagination like crazy. So to be able to just go in and see many of these places felt like coming full circle with Little Johnny circa 2001. Roll your eyes if you must, but this is awesome. Oh, and speaking of which, environments like this aren't just lazy nostalgia bait. Groovy music in particular is tied directly into Neely's bar, with James needing to locate items for a new puzzle. It's clear that Bloober Team carefully studied the town and had a lot of fun thinking of inventive ways to incorporate these various interiors into actual, meaningful gameplay segments. It's wonderful. And of course, the classics return, but don't expect a simple reskin. Things haven't been altered to be completely unrecognizable from the source material, and just as well, but they certainly have been expanded and enhanced, starting with Woodside Apartments. There's now a pleasant little lobby and a reception desk with a manager's office, complete with this neat private living area. Before, it was a handful of mailboxes and a stairwell, essentially. I love the golden orange glow contrasting with the cold, dusty living quarters so much, and in general, the color palette of the remake is absolutely perfect. Plenty of cold colors with light grays, steely blues, and muted greens, along with the ashen taupes and rusty otherworld, of course. But Bloober cleverly worked in more warm earth tones like red neon signs glowing on a dark rainy night, or the dying fluorescent bulbs barely springing to life, offering this really neat, artificial warm golden brown shimmer. The environmental detail that I had fervently raved about in my review of the original is back, but with exponentially greater depth and variety thanks to the 20+ year jump in tech. But it's not simply advances in processors that cause this. The team at Bloober clearly has some highly skilled digital artists working in their ranks, and it shows. Woodside is downright amazing, and like the original, each apartment is unique and distinctive. Boots by the door, a TV dinner tray next to the window-mounted AC unit, a cane resting against the bed for ease of access, with a front-wheeled walker near the bedroom door for when the presumably old resident needed to take longer walks. even down to the minute details like dead bugs adding up behind the plastic fluorescent light bulb cover in the bathroom. This isn't hyperbole, man. The sheer amount of stuff that gets crammed into each and every area of this remake is genuinely staggering. It took me over 20 hours to finish this game, and a big chunk of that time was just soaking all this stuff in. And then you get to watch day turn into night as you explore Brookhaven, and this was another unexpected surprise. It just felt so natural. You don't realize how much running and fighting you've been doing all day until suddenly you realize that it's getting late, it's getting dark, and the rain is beginning to pour outside. So, how about those character designs, eh? Yeah, so despite all of my positive feedback, the character designs are definitely a mixed bag. We already discussed Maria, so we'll put that to bed in room 312. But what of the others? Yeah, Angela looks like David Duchovny now. I saw that meme and I simply cannot unsee it. I'm sorry, it's too accurate. It's not a knock on Gianna Keel, the new actor and model for Angela. She's a very pretty lady, but the in-game facial render is a bit square and weird looking. I know the original Angela was modeled on Sandra Bullock in the 90s, but the character was also designed to deliberately look and sound a little older than her actual age, due to the severe abuse she suffered, aging her beyond her years. Oh hell, enough with the analysis. The remake model just kinda looks like crap. At least the clothing is accurate. It's a crucial part of her backstory.
Heed! Paper! No! Move that melon of yours and get the paper if you can.
Eddie's design looks good, and his clothing is faithful to the original, but he kinda looks like a cartoon character now, with that big freaking puddin' head of his. Old Andre the Giant skull over there. The detail on Eddie's face is great. The various little micro expressions are animated really well and do a great job of showing his guilt, rage, and eventual psychosis. But I have to say, I don't like how Ed is made out to be an absolutely revolting slob. Pounding strawberry ice cream straight from the carton with his bare hands, confection all over his shirt. Look, hey, several of my family members have struggled greatly with their weight over the years. I sympathize with the battle to a degree, and I hate bullies just as much as anyone else. I really do. But it's kinda hard to sympathize with old Mercury capsule head Dombrowski in the remake. He's a big, disgusting blob of protoplasm now, instead of a slightly heavier guy with a cruel bully that ends up cracking under the town's test. Oh well, it's a subjective nitpick anyway.
At least you got your appetite back.
Laura's character model, on the other hand, is basically a perfect replica from the original. Not much to say there, and the kid playing her does a phenomenal job. Cool. The big change for the remake, and from within the remake, is how Bloober improved James's model from the initial remake trailers. Thankfully, Bloober did away with old Boo-Boo McPoutface and gave the model a much more neutral look. James looks great now, and the actor Luke Roberts was the perfect model. He's a very handsome dude, but he's not overly sexy or uber masculine. But he's been upgraded from a giant weeping vagina. He's right where he should be, just an average dude driving around with a flowery blanket over his cargo, as one does. One area where Bloober really crushed this remake visually was in its monster designs, and, well, I suppose it's because they mostly just left them alone. Masahiro Ito's brilliant creature designs are works of art, and it was critical, to me, that Bloober didn't mess with his style. Not because I'm a snobby purist, but because each enemy design tells a critical part of the story. What they wear, how they move, even down to the sounds that they make. It all has a very specific purpose outside of simply being creepy. And now, with the increased power of modern-day tech, little details are much more notable. You can really see the proximal point of the gastrostomy tube sticking out of the mannequin's gut, and I can't tell if the lying figure is braced in a straitjacket, or a distraction vest as they're kindly referred to these days, but it kind of adds credence to a certain theory about where a certain character may have been housed prior to their demise, but again, no spoilers. Either way, monsters will now be bruised and soaked in blood as you batter them. It adds an edge to combat, yes, and serves as a clever health indicator for the player, but it's also very uncomfortable from a storyline perspective. Even the mannequins now have a distinct female moan when you're killing them. The animations for the lying figures are slinky, they're kind of sultry, they'll sway around drunkenly, and mannequins move with a mix of that creepy robotic precision and fearsome aggression, like an angry insect, like they really want you dead. There's even a new mannequin variant that we can talk about in a few. So, in my review of Silent Hill 2, I detailed every monster and why they are designed the way they are. Full breakdown, spoilers, the works, so I won't retread and prattle on here. But suffice it to say, the remake is faithful and the monsters are done justice in the new engine. Especially that red pyramid thing. Pyramid Head's intro is still just as chilling and effective as it was in the original, and I am so glad they didn't make him that 9-foot-tall bodybuilder muscle man fan fiction freak bullshit that I see online from time to time. Or that stupid goddamn generic slasher villain that shitty movie turned him into. This is the proper look for Pyramid Head. I only wish there had been a reference to the White Hunter, but that's me being a greedy fanboy. On a happy note, one thing I have to mention about the visuals in this remake is the map. The in-game map is as good as it could possibly be, and it negates the semi-tedious back and forth from the PS2 original. This was made slightly better in the enhanced edition on PC, but the old days of waiting for the map to boot up and then again to put it away are over. James now dynamically breaks out the map when you command it, and it's the perfect mix of realistic and video game logic, and it works flawlessly. I really adore the little touches, like James making a quick jot with his red marker when you find something important, as well as the great details like the semi-erased smudges of once locked, now accessible doors. It's such a clever blend of graphic design and gameplay convenience, and it's pretty much seamless. Lastly, and then we'll move on, I had mentioned the Otherworld previously, and motherfucker it returns in the remake. From the very first Silent Hill, the Otherworld has provided a really eerie, unsettling look at what is essentially this world's version of hell. And with the jump from PS1 to PS2, Team Silent really embraced the power of the new console and made the Otherworld shine. The bizarre combination of rusted industrial hellscapes fused with recognizable environments has always been great. Now, a big change that Bloober implemented, one that genuinely surprised me, is how much earlier you get into the Otherworld. Now, when James enters Blue Creek Apartments from Woodside, instead of just hopping across the fire escape gap, he passes through a distinct red door, and it's unmistakable where he's at. Blue Creek Apartments are greatly, and I can't emphasize this enough, greatly expanded from the original, and the corroded apartments, fire escapes, catwalks, and a special boss area are all appropriately hellish, and I found myself shaking my head, smiling the whole time. But as cool and creepy as the new Blue Creek is, the Brookhaven Otherworld returns, and it really, truly feels like a hellscape. Taut canvases, barbed wire, infinite chasms, bubbling caustic bathtubs, all the filth and decay everywhere you look. I could go on and on, but quite simply, The Otherworld is perfection in this remake. It couldn't have been done any better.
Campers 0, El Beastador 1.
Speaking of perfection, Akira Yamaoka returns to Silent Hill. The last time Yamaoka-san had been involved with this franchise was when he basically said that he had interest in producing music for Silent Hills, and we all know how that project turned out. So, to hear that he was returning for his baby, Silent Hill 2, the soundtrack that he stated is his personal favorite, was something that really gave me hope in this remake, and he did not disappoint. Hearing the classic tunes from the original game, some slightly altered, was, of course, a treat. There's nothing quite like that original soundtrack, and the amount of hours I've blasted it through my ears when writing, studying, or contemplating reasons to live is unhealthy. Now, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes freaking out over it because I said what I needed to in my review of Silent Hill 2, but there are some excellent uses of the classic soundtrack here in the remake that are smartly incorporated into gameplay sequences. Oh, and fear not, several of the iconic sounds return in this remake too, just as good as they were before. The Baroness horn, the invisible ritual monster, the trampling hooves in the Toluca prison yard, they're all here, and they're all good. I also love the little enhancements brought into this remake, such as this buzzing, droning noise emanating from the red save square, giving it this otherworldly quality. Oh, also, when you save in front of Maria for the first time, she mentions that James basically went into a trance. Little details like that really make me appreciate this remake that much more. As does the voiceover for James's inner thoughts now. Instead of just text popping up on the screen, the actor performs these lines. It's really, really cool when you get to the Silent Hill Historical Society and you notice a certain painting on the wall. But is it all good?
No, it ain't all good.
It could just be personal preference, but on the whole, the acting in this game, with a few exceptions, is kinda dull. The actors did an okay job, and I'm sure they were just following direction, naturally, but there were several times that the inflections just came off as flat, where they were not in the original. The 2001 game often gets mistakenly judged for having bad voice acting, or perhaps acting where some of the direction was lost in translation from Japanese to English. But no, the way characters intentionally emphasize certain words or they speak entire sentences in strange, stilted ways was deliberate, and it added to the surreal, nightmare-like quality of this experience. At least, that's what most of us say. Not all the acting in Silent Hill 2 is perfect, but it's incredibly charming, and sometimes it gets genuinely intense. Donna Burke as Angela was fantastic. She played the leery, damaged soul with a blend of confusion, anger, sadness, and longing. David Shelfel, as the somewhat dim, progressively unhinged Eddie Dombrowski, was phenomenal, and some of the cutscenes with him used to really creep me out as a kid. And of course, Monica Taylor Horgan as Maria/Mary is some of the highest caliber voice acting in the annals of gaming history. That whole letter reading scene that she did has brought thousands of people to tears. It's not that the acting in the remake is bad per se, it just seems like they toned down the moments where characters would react with added confusion, curiosity, or madness.
Are you afraid? I'm sorry.
That disturbing, almost jeering way that she asks James that question in the original is so good and it's so memorable. I get that Angela is at her rock bottom depression here, but the way the line is delivered now just sounds so lifeless.
Are you afraid? Sorry.
It's almost as if Bloober wanted the characters to speak like actual people now, which is completely understandable, but that unsettling, just off delivery in the original is what made those conversations so good. But I will say, Gianna Keel does a really good job with Angela when she's reliving, well, you know, and it's highly effective and disturbing. And that abstract daddy boss fight, you have no idea how hard I'm biting back from talking about that. When I listen to Salome Gunnarsdottir, the new actress for Maria and Mary, talk about the game, she seems to understand and respect the legacy of her characters. But, and I know this may sound odd, but it's very important, she does a much better job as Maria than she does as Mary. She does a really good job as this somewhat flirty, provocative lady who sort of gives up the ghost, pardon the expression, in the famous prison bar scene. The tempting, cutesy, girly vibe is gone completely, replaced with the cold, steely reality of Maria. She wants what she wants and is going to break James down to get it, and he very nearly capitulates. Aside from the freaking sunlight in this room, apparently, yeah, the shadowing is all off in here, the performance between both actors is still great. Okay, good. But, and again, I won't spoil things, but I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. The letter reading scene at the very end of the game is completely wrong. I tried rationalizing, justifying, and other ings, but sorry, the emotion that this scene once had with Monica Taylor Horgan is completely gone. And it's not just the famous crying. When Monica was reading, she sounded like Mary, James's sweet wife, and not the cold, manipulative Maria. In the remake, both characters sound like Maria the entire time, and the letter reading at the end just sounds devoid of any of the emotions from a lady in her final hours. As does the ultra-sad hallway scene near the end. Same thing there, just And these are kind of important scenes, to say the least. And again, I don't think it's a lack of talent, but possibly misdirection. Then again, I wasn't there and have no inside info, simply speculation and the final product, which in my opinion isn't as good. Bloober did do kind of a cool thing with Eddie, where they hired two actors, Scott Haining and Danny Carrane, one to play Eddie early in the game and one for later in the game when he starts to slip. This is really cool, and I appreciate the effort to emphasize how Eddie Dombrowski has gone off the deep end. But frankly, neither performance can hold up to David Schoffel. David really sounded like he was putting his diaphragm into every line, and some of his rants in Silent Hill 2 were genuinely disturbing. In the remake, Eddie just kinda comes off like a lazy, disinterested goofball running around with his big revolver and strawberry ice cream. Maybe that was the point, to make him even more pathetic, but honestly, I didn't feel for him. I just wanted to put him down and move on.
You should see your face, James.
Okay, the main character. How does James Sunderland hold up in the remake? Well, quite frankly, I enjoyed Luke Roberts' performance more than the Guy Seehee original. I know, grab your torches and your pitchforks. Listen, Guy Seehee will always be the definitive James Sunderland. That role is just too memorable, it's too iconic, and it's irreplaceable. I love that character dearly. I just prefer the new performance over the original. It's tricky to explain why his seemingly confused yet determined and somewhat distant performance is so good here without spoiling the big plot points, but Luke really nails what James should be, and there's a very gradual disintegration of this character over the course of the game that, depending on the ending that you get, really comes full circle with a broken man. The ending that I got was way more effective than it was in the original, which is in part thanks to the enhanced visuals, of course, but Luke's performance is truly stellar, and the man really crushed the role of James Sunderland. And he doesn't do that overly dramatic, breathy, thespian nonsense from the HD collection redub. Thank God.
That's what I keep telling myself. A dead person can't write a letter.
You suck!
All right, the big one, the most important subject. How does the Silent Hill 2 remake play? Well, I'm so glad I just asked myself. The obvious big changes are the combat and the camera, both being adjusted to meet modern standards, but it goes a lot deeper than that. Thankfully, you can still select your combat and riddle difficulty separately, thank you very much, Bloober. And you can customize your interface to permit as many or as few modern-day gaming conveniences as you'd like. Tutorials and tips, ammo counters, loading screen hints, etc. Or simply select retro mode and shut it all off. Once on the trail to town, you'll get to experience the first of many new areas that the player can explore. I've heard this little spot referred to as pointless, as if it were there to artificially expand this area. Evidently, we've never heard of tutorials. And maybe you're really young and the remake is your first trip into Silent Hill. And whether or not that's true, or you've been playing games for over 30 years, this little section simply demonstrates, hey, you can climb through windows now and find items like keys. Oh, and here's a door to use the key on. It took all of 60 seconds, and that was with me taking it slow for demo purposes. It's not that complicated. Does going through the environments now feel a lot like The Last of Us? Yes, it's quite clear where the modern-day inspirations are coming from. But so what? If Bloober had simply pumped out a buffed-up version of the original code, people would have called them lazy. Oh yeah, the hardcore fanbase would have been thrilled, and Bloober would have been psyched to sell 100,000 copies, I'm sure. But this is also a business. If the average person or new, younger fan familiar with modern gaming was curious to see what the hype was all about with Silent Hill 2, and they got James Sunderland whacking away like a robot, word of mouth would have spread, and this game would have been shoveled into obscurity, where those hardcore fans seem to want to keep the fucking thing, by the way. Locked away, just for them and their sadness. But Bloober Team went all out and embraced the fluid animation, fancy camera, and the exploration of games like The Last of Us and the Resident Evil 2 remake, and then proceeded to make it their own. James can now break into cars and through business windows to access new items and areas to pillage. It is kind of odd to be this ruffian vandal all of a sudden, but looking around, I don't think anyone minds. And it only goes from here. Bloober incorporated a metric shit ton of gentle expectation subversions for returning fans. Neely's, for instance, is still Neely's, and they kept the whole message, correct font and all. Only now, they've added this awesome jukebox puzzle. But it's formatted like Silent Hill 2, meaning that it retains the formula of searching your environment for weird little objects to assemble them for the final puzzle. This is something I raved about in my review of the original game, and Bloober really seemed to get the whole strange item combination thing, and their original puzzles in the remake could have been straight from the original Team Silent, and I'd have never known the difference. There are a ton of these throughout the game, many of them an expanded version of the original game's riddles, and most of them are fantastic. Then Bloober Team would go all out for their own puzzles, including fresh areas like the Golden Apple Vault Room. It's a dark room covered in what looks like chalk drawings, or maybe white paint, with a very familiar 9-square design in the back. The clues for the safe combination are carefully hidden, yet a little extra shiny under torch illumination. It does feel a bit Saw-ish, but without any dramatic booby traps or countdown timers or anything like that. I love this room. It just looks like madness, you know what I mean? Another new expanded puzzle area is the M room. James locates and tallies the various markings on these bugs in this weird sort of entomology room. It's not brain surgery, mind you, but it's visually interesting, and the room is very Silent Hill, what with its creepy bug-infested nightmare vibe. But then, it leads right into an old familiar spot. And as I said, this is kind of the hallmark of this remake, paying respect to the old familiar haunts of Silent Hill 2 while expanding and enhancing them to a greater degree. I had mentioned Blue Creek earlier. In the original, you could speed through this area in no time. Now it's been fleshed out to an unexpectedly great degree. This includes the fight with Pyramid Head too. The original game didn't have the most dynamic boss fights, we'll say. Memorable? Absolutely. Iconic? You bet. But not exactly a challenge. In the remake, however, fighting Pyramid Head is far more kinetic and intense, and most importantly, above symbolism, above deeper meanings, and suffering and abuse, and all that other stuff, this game is fun. The game is just fun to play. Everything has been streamlined for much more on-the-fly gameplay. I don't have to stop and go into my menu every 10 seconds to reload my pistol. I can just hit triangle to use a health drink, or hold it to use a syringe. I can tap directional buttons to cycle through firearms, or just hit R2 to swing my melee weapon. And thankfully, Bloober didn't force a ham-fisted crafting system. There are no light RPG elements. You get a stick and a gun. Figure it out, stupid. And guess what? No battle passes, no microtransactions, no $20 Nicki Minaj skin packs or any other predatory bullshit from the awful state of gaming that we're currently enduring. Hooray! Praise him and all his mercy. And let's talk about melee combat, which, to say the least, has been upgraded from 2001 standards. If you're a Silent Hill 2 purist, you might want to skip ahead. You might not like this, but melee in the remake is leagues beyond the original game. And that shouldn't offend you. It should be expected and celebrated. Look, personally, between us, I think humanity peaked in the 90s, but it's not the old days anymore, okay? I miss Ace of Base as much as the next corny Anglo. Look, say what you want. James isn't a capable fighter, he's an everyman. How does he know how to dodge and cycle weapons like a pro? I don't know, baby. How does a theoretical physicist take down platoons of highly trained Marines and goddamn Gonarch on Zen? You know how? Because it's a video game. If Bloober kept the same whack 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 combat as the original, they would have been crucified for being lazy. If they update it, the cult calls for their head. For my money, and I paid my $69.99, the important thing was that I was having fun. Yeah, mamba fun? The melee in this game is a mix of Joel, Isaac Clarke, and whoever that guy was from Callisto Protocol. Now, you may think that this takes the already easy Silent Hill 2 and breaks it down into putty, but oh no. James has been made more capable, but so have the enemies. Enemies here are pissed off. They screech and thrash like someone has put a pillow over their face. They are mad, and they want to pay James back in kind. Mannequins in particular scurry about and hide in plain sight, often behind a door or weaved into a bunch of actual mannequins. They'll even do things like hide under desks. I had a few of those fun jump scare laughs throughout my game, and yeah, it does get a tad annoying getting jumped by them every now and again, but you start to kind of predict where they'll turn up, so it's not too bad. And during combat, you'll see these damn things charge up and then pounce on your face. Pretty impressive in a pair of pumps, frankly. How's that for alliteration? Toluca Prison, aside from alterations to the yard and the addition of some new animal door wings, is familiar and not as radically overhauled as Blue Creek was. However, do you remember this picture from the original game's manual? All those mannequins crawling above James and Toluca? When did that happen in the game? Well, apparently, Bloober had the same thought, and yeah, there's now a spider variant of the mannequin. It's creepy, and it takes full advantage of the new camera. Nothing like a nimble vertical enemy to make Toluca even more freaky. Bloober even brought back the flying mannequins Easter egg from the original. Now that is dedication. Even the basic lying figure is threatening now, and these things were a joke in the original. They have their usual acid spit, now more thick and viscous, as opposed to the mist, and if you try to spam melee attacks, they'll straight up headbutt you. And the Otherworld variant is just plain rude with its last man standing perk and all. Bubblehead nurses return as well. They look incredible and they will mess your shit up. I love how you can really make out the red squares on their mouths now, the sloshing head, and that ultra creepy baby face outline thanks to the Unreal Engine. Bloober very easily could have ruined this design, but they didn't, and the nurses fight like hell too. The one single death I had in this entire game was from a bubblehead. Also, the Mandarin returns, and what was a simple enemy from the original, really kind of understated, comes back in this remake in the biggest, baddest, and most unexpected way possible, and it's utterly glorious. If you've already played the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, just wait. I have to admit that sometimes the aggressive AI can be somewhat burdensome and kind of frustrating when you get ganged up on in tight quarters. However, the dodge mechanic is good enough to where, as long as you keep your distance, stick and move, pick your shots, and use firearms periodically, nothing in this game should give you too much trouble. Oh yeah, firearms have been made so much better now too. Basically, if you've played the Resident Evil 2 remake, you're all set. I don't mean that as a snide dig. Resi 2 was damn near perfect, and the shooting mechanics were sublime, so the Silent Hill 2 remake feels just fine. And unlike Resident Evil 2, it doesn't take 12,000 rounds to put down an enemy. Now, if you hate the redesigned camera, nothing I'm gonna say is gonna change your mind. Sorry. But you probably made up your mind months before this remake launched anyway, so whatever. And come on, the way James racks the forearm of the shotgun doesn't do it for you? Come on, baby. Oh, and ammo pickups are now reduced to anywhere from a single bullet to a small handful of rounds. It really makes you pick your shots more carefully and lets you make good use of the new melee mechanics. Speaking of improvements, the chase scene with Pyramid Head and Maria is much better now. Maria takes the freaking lead, and it's old Jimbo that has to keep up now. It's a tad bit Uncharted-esque, but it's pretty thrilling, and it's over before it grows tiresome. Oh, and speaking of Uncharted, another new feature is the use of white cloth to denote areas where James could climb through or where he can break through walls. It's slightly less gamey than the yellow spots in Uncharted, but it's still gamey enough to keep you aware of your environment and reachable areas. However, it has to be said, one thing that Bloober incorporated way too often are these odd cart dragging sequences. James just pushes and pulls a cart to a spot and then climbs up on it. That's it. It feels straight out of a Naughty Dog game, and not in a good way. Also, the whole tap X repeatedly to reach further into a hole or to jump down into a hole is pretty cool at first, but then it just gets old very quickly. And as grateful as I am, and as exciting as the area updates are in the remake, I can't lie, by the time I got to the rotating face cube puzzle, I kind of pined for the simplicity of the original. The face cube has been updated to a significant level, and it's very cool looking, and it's all done in real time. But by the time I solved the second huge labyrinth area and got spit out right back in front of the face cube yet again, I audibly groaned. It was getting super long in the tooth, and I could practically hear the wheels spinning. Again, more gameplay for the price of a single-player game is something I celebrate and cheer about from the top of the mountain. I'm not trying to whine, and there was nothing bad about this section. It just kinda ran on and on. After you do get to the third and final labyrinth trial, it becomes a monotonous sort of endurance mode where you go from room to room battling the same old enemies you've been fighting the entire game. Thankfully, Lakeview Hotel completely revitalizes everything in the home stretch, worry not. Oh, and Trick or Treat returns. It's extra dark and scary now, and it's good, but honestly I kinda prefer the over-exuberant cheeriness of the original game's announcer. The fact that he was so bubbly while detailing horrors was what made that work for me. The last thing I need to mention, no loading times. How great is that? You can see small frame stutters when you run into a new big area, but it passes quite quickly and it never ruins the flow. I remember reading about no loading times, and I guess I was just so enamored by the first few hours of the game that I didn't really notice it for a while. It wasn't until I reached Brookhaven that it hit me. I'm wandering through this hospital, weaving from room to room, going from floor to floor, completely unhindered. When you know what you're doing in the original game, it's not so bad, but let's take off the nostalgia goggles for a second, okay? That's rich coming from me, I get it. But let us acknowledge that it was kind of a bitch to load room after room and then open and close the map over and over again in case you got lost, especially in Brookhaven. Now, would I say ultimately that the remake of Silent Hill 2 is better than the original? Oh, heaven's night, no. I would never dare say that publicly. But in this regard, the remake is objectively superior to the original. It feels like, you know when you've been on a dirt road for a while and then you hit that smooth pavement? Ah, that's nice. As far as reception goes, it seems that many people agree. Bloober Team has achieved what most of us thought was impossible. They took the single most influential horror game of the past 25 years and they brought it up to the current day audio, visual, and gameplay standards without corrupting the sacred, intensely psychological mind trip of a story. They took the aging heart of not only Silent Hill 2, but this entire franchise that has been dying on the vine for basically 20 years and injected hot, fresh blood directly into it. And they did it without forcing in some pointless edge with new fancy cursing or graphic brutality to show everyone that they're young and tough, like this ain't your dad's Silent Hill 2. There was also a very specific Silent Hill 3 reference in Lakeview Hotel involving bread. It could just be for the memes, but if this is a clue about the future, then consider me sufficiently turgid. Although, I have to say this, I think that the first Silent Hill deserves the remake treatment more than any other game, period. Not just in this series. Maybe Thief 2. Anyway, if Heather Mason is set to come back, you won't hear me complaining. Of course, it is inevitable that some people will dislike it, but there are some fans that will simply never admit that it's possible for the remake to be better than or at least stand shoulder to shoulder with the original Silent Hill 2, which it does. And if you genuinely do not like this remake, I completely respect your opinion, and I'm not here to bash you or say that you're wrong. Your taste is your taste, and you're entitled to that. I'm not smarter than you. I'm not better than you, and my opinion isn't somehow more valid because I have a microphone. I'm not sitting in some ivory tower sneering at you, unlike some. Okay, my hands are shaking. I have to do this. It seems to me that the strangest and somewhat saddest responses to the remake are coming from the old guard. Contemporaries of mine, be they much smaller or much bigger than Hypertension Films, guys in my age range or maybe a little bit older that grew up around the same time, who seem to share my love for this series. I've listened to some bitter takes where the reviewer seems awfully grumpy that so many people have made so many reviews about Silent Hill 2 over the years that enough has been said already. This while making a video about, and thus profiting from, Silent Hill 2. Regardless, it's disappointing that people have that bitter gatekeeping mentality of, I've been playing this series since it came out, mister. All you newcomers think you're so clever with your extensive essays. Keep your hair on, Granddad. I don't know why others make long Silent Hill 2 videos, but for me, I too have been playing Silent Hill since 1999. I still have my first disc from 25 years ago. I'm a long-time fan and have been since before it was cool. Silent Hill 2, in particular, means a great deal to me, as it does to most of you, I reckon. And you know what? I'm stoked that a whole new generation is picking up the Silent Hill ball and running with it. Those of us in the old guard tend to dismiss the upcoming generation of gamers as hyperactive, Fortnite-addicted weebs. Yeah, well, to be fair, there are a lot of you, but I blame your lazy parents for letting Adderall and TikTok raise you. But I'm not a bitter dick, and I welcome you to the better side of gaming with open arms. That's part of the reason why I made this channel. And the passion for this series is partly why we got this excellent remake. And if you, yes you, Gary, Mary, quite contrary, whatever the fuck your name is, can hear my voice right now and you've been debating on making your own Silent Hill 2 video, you go right ahead. Make it 10 minutes, make it 5 hours, blow mine out of the water, I don't care. There are so many worse things going on in the world to worry about. And I laugh when someone smugly proclaims, I'm tired of seeing this game, enough has been said about it already. Firstly, nobody asked for your permission. Secondly, not enough has been said about Doom already? Or Grand Theft Auto, or Metal Gear, or Quake? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be snide, I'm not trying to be combative. I just get mad when people are resentful when other people are enjoying themselves. And you know, personally, I think Taylor Swift produces some of the most boring music ever made. It all sounds the same to me. I don't get people crying over that garbage. But, true story, I knew a kid in a clinic with MS that lived for her little Taylor Swift CD. It meant the world to her to listen to that album. So what? Because I don't like it, I should go around telling her that she fucking can't? I don't begrudge you for having the time of your life. I hope you do. I hope we all do. Life is too goddamn short to be miserable about things that are supposed to be making us less miserable, fart face. I had to get that out. Excuse me. And apparently a lot of other people agree, since the remake sold 1 million copies within its first 3 days of release. And I also know that the R80 websites have been buzzing as well. But you know, Bloober Team deserves that paper. They clearly respected and loved the game they were making, yet they had the confidence to stand up and make it their own as well. I never thought in a million years that a game like Silent Hill 2 would be brought back in such a glorious fashion, but I couldn't be happier. And again, if you don't like it, if it's the worst thing ever, OMG, they ruined it forever, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But in my opinion, The Silent Hill 2 remake is as good as the original Silent Hill 2. I wouldn't necessarily say it's better because it's not an original concept, but it takes facets from the original and amplifies them to be that much better for the most part. Also, there are these little Polaroid pictures that you can find around, and while I was playing through the game, I had my sneaking suspicion of what might be happening to James Sunderland, and the solution to these Polaroid pictures all but confirms what I was thinking. And it's so great. It's such a cool little addition. Anyway, in my review of Silent Hill 2, I just asked that you give the remake a chance because it had the potential to be something special. And a bunch of you said, "No, it's gonna be shit." I fucking told you so. Hypertension John, he told you so. Trust your boy. I tell you no lies, otherwise I'll lay my wiener right across your thighs, cause I told you so. Hypertension John, he told you so. Told you so.